Your unprocessed emotions are holding you back in every way imaginable. If you're someone who feels either stagnant in your life, you feel stuck, you feel easily bothered or triggered by certain things that people say or do, it's likely that you have unprocessed emotions. So in today's video, we are going to talk about what unprocessed emotions are, and you definitely want to stick around towards the end because I'm going to give you some examples to identify if maybe you have unprocessed emotions. And I'm also going to give you some steps to kind of help you process those emotions so that you can release them and ultimately be a happier person, so that you can ultimately be living the life that you want to be living, so you can have the relationships that you want to be having. So definitely stick around till the end. If you're new here, I'm Liberate, and on this channel we really talk a lot about doing inner work, healing, reflecting, pretty much anything that has to do with self-growth, self-development, and living our most happiest, healthiest lives, all that jazz. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, definitely hit that like button. Please hit the subscribe button for that YouTube algorithm. I'm new to YouTube, so your support and your love really does help me out, and I really would appreciate it. Thanks! So let's get into today's video. I am going to have chapters for you guys, so if you want to kind of skip to a part that you feel is ultimately what you need to hear right now and what's going to serve you the best, feel free to do that. The chapters are here for you. Let's get into it. What are unprocessed emotions? Basically what it sounds like. Unprocessed emotions are anything that has to do with like negative feelings that you have that you did not process. These are things that you have kept inside you on a subconscious level. And this really does stem from childhood. Like a lot of our pain and suffering stems from our childhood. So if you felt like you weren't good enough because maybe someone said that to you, maybe a teacher told you that you weren't smart, maybe it was a primary caregiver that told you were never going to be good enough. Unfortunately, that does happen to some people, and that is some people's reality. And although that is not your fault, it is your responsibility to release those emotions because they don't serve you. They weigh you down, they hold you back, and they just overall literally don't feel good. So unprocessed emotions are literally negative things, negative experiences, negative emotions, things like fear, unworthiness, self-doubt, pity, anger. Those are all examples of unprocessed emotions. And so if something happened to you during your childhood, even in adulthood, really, like throughout any age in your life, you can be unprocessing emotions based on whatever you're experiencing. But really, like when you think about unprocessed emotions, it's gonna be based off of a negative event that happened to you and you never really dealt with it. And having, I think, really truly self-acceptance here is really important, because if you were a kid and someone said something to you and you didn't feel comfortable enough to tell an adult, that was not necessarily your fault, right? Like a lot of us have dealt with things in the best way we can, you know, if we didn't have someone that we could talk to. And that's not to personally say, like, I, for example, didn't have my mom or my dad. My parents were always there for me, but I'm first gen, and so there was just like that cultural barrier with my parents. And so a lot of things I just didn't even tell them because there wasn't necessarily that encouragement to kind of speak up on things that was happening at school, you know, things that boys said to me. So I never really said anything, and that's because I just simply didn't know how. So unprocessed emotions really do kind of take a toll on you, because to kind of feel like you're not able to speak up or say what's on your mind or tell an adult when you're a little kid how you're really feeling, it's hard. And if that energy doesn't go anywhere, if that's not being released, guess what? You hold on to it and it does show up and it manifests later on in life. So kind of to just summarize that, this first part, unprocessed emotions are literally any negative experience that has happened to you, but it's typically events that happened to you as a kid that never got dealt with. So they're really unresolved emotions and events that have happened in your life. So let's talk about what happens to unprocessed emotions. So if there were events that happened in your life, these negative events that never got dealt with, and they're just kind of stuck in your body, what happens is it can manifest into physical symptoms. So if you have really tense shoulders, like if you find yourself like kind of like stiff like this, or your shoulders are always just tense in that way, that is an example of anger. I know that that's something that I have dealt with, and it's something that I still deal with. Sometimes I'll notice like my shoulders are tensed up like this, and I have to ask myself, where do I hold on to anger? Like, where has anger showed up in my life? When have I been angry and I didn't release it? When have I been angry and I just shrugged it off and I didn't deal with it or talk to that person or have that confrontation? When have I been an angry person and I didn't let myself genuinely feel that anger? I just kind of, swallowed it and repressed it. So Anger can kind of show up in that way. You can carry stored emotions in your hips. That's why often people say, like, if you do yoga, it can be an emotional experience, because when you're in those poses and you're really uncomfortable and you're having to breathe through it, you're actually allowing your body the chance to release those trapped emotions. And so it is overwhelming. It's overwhelming on your body. It's overwhelming emotionally, all of that. But it's amazing. Yoga is such an amazing way to kind of release those trapped emotions. And I'll talk about that later on. But basically, you know, what happens when you have unprocessed emotions is that it's just stuck in your body. Basically, you just have all this junk and all this crap and unresolved events and trauma and situations that have just not been addressed. And so you just hold on to it. You're just holding on. You're a walking like bubble of just stress and bad experiences and past traumas, and you're just holding on to it. So you basically kind of create this like toxicity in your body where, you know, not only are you holding on to these things, but you're potentially causing physical harm to your body, you know, beyond just your well-being and your mental health. Like, you may be actually contributing to chronic illnesses, to chronic diseases, to inflammation, just all this stuff that you're not supposed to feel, all this stuff that you don't have to feel. And something that I'm learning about right now too is how your unprocessed emotions can affect your immunity. It's not surprising. Like, when I started learning about this stuff, I was like, okay, I mean, I'm not surprised, because I can sit here and think about people that I know in my life who, when they got into like their older age, the family that I have who were kind of bitter, you know, the family that I had who held on to like some of their traumas, the family that I had that were just kind of negative people, happened to be the people who ended up developing certain sicknesses in their old age, compared to family that I've had who were generally happy, family that I had who, you know, showed up as their best selves, who were just positive people, who loved their life, who were just very kind and always just tried to be optimistic about what happened in their life. They were the ones who happened to live longer. They were the ones who happened to not really have illness, you know, in their old age. And so things like that I think of like our body and our well-being, and how you feel really does play a role in the quality of life that you have. So it's a responsibility. It's your responsibility to literally deal with those unprocessed emotions, because if you don't, you're really only hurting yourself in the end. And maybe you don't feel like you're hurting yourself right now, but down the road in the future, who's to say, right? God forbid something happens to any one of us. I wish nothing but, you know, amazing health and well-being and prosperity for all of us, but it's our responsibility to take care of ourselves. So that's kind of what happens to unprocessed emotions physically. The other thing that I want to talk about is just how unprocessed emotions hold you back in general. Unprocessed emotions can kind of sometimes make it difficult for you to talk about things that actually matter to you. So you might find yourself kind of going with the flow. Maybe you know, don't want to go to that event with your group of friends, but you find yourself going anyway because you don't really want to tell people no. So it kind of makes it hard to really stick up for yourself, and it makes it hard to just be honest with what you want, you know, and what you want to do and how you want to spend your time. Unprocessed emotions can also make it difficult for you to have intimate relationships, right? Like, and it doesn't even have to be, you know, just intimate relationships with a partner, but just friendships in general, you know, how you meet new people, how you open yourself up to new people, how you receive new people in your life, how you give love, how you accept love. Like, if you have unprocessed emotions, you may not feel safe to, you know, be completely open and to fully trust people. You may feel like everyone is out to get you, and it may make it really difficult for you to, you know, just be yourself and to have peace of mind and, you know, that ease of just, you can be who you are and not feel like everyone's out to get you. So unprocessed emotions can definitely get in the way of the friendships, relationships, intimate relationships that you have. Unprocessed emotions can also really make it hard for you to be your best cheerleader, to be your own best friend, to be your own hype person, because yeah, it feels amazing when people are there, you know, hyping you up. Of course, it feels amazing when you have friends cheering you on, but if you're not cheering yourself on, if you're not praising yourself, if you're not giving yourself the shout outs where it's due, how can anyone else really do that for you? And how can you be receiving of it, right? Like, your unprocessed emotions may make it difficult for you to genuinely be proud of yourself, for you to genuinely, you know, be happy with your progress and where you're at in your life. So unprocessed emotions can really get in the way of you just being happy and being just proud of where you're at, in the sense of, you know, not trusting yourself. Like, you may have a lot of self-doubt if you have unprocessed emotions. You may feel like, you know, what you're doing is not good enough. You may feel like you're doing something wrong, and thinking of things like Where in your childhood did you feel like you did things wrong? Like everything for the most part really does connect back to our childhood. And so it may be really hard for you to trust yourself. It also might instill fear in you. You may be fearful of things that you have said. You may be fearful of events that haven't even happened in your life yet. And so unprocessed emotions really do get in the way, in the sense of causing you to always be in this state of like panic, of worry, of not knowing what's going to happen next, of not knowing how people are going to perceive you. So just another reason to work through those feelings, so you're not stuck in that state of fear and that low energy. And so the final thing that I want to say about how unprocessed emotions get in the way is just that they hinder your overall growth. Like unprocessed emotions truly do get in the way of everything. So when you kind of combine all of these things that they get in the way of, between illnesses, between your self-esteem, between your relationships, overall, it just hinders your growth. Overall, unprocessed emotions just keep you in a place where you never really can progress or grow, because you're just always stuck in that same energy. You're stuck in that same state. And so it's so important to identify and address any unprocessed emotions that you have, so that you can release them and grow and elevate and move on. So we've talked about what unprocessed emotions are, and we've also talked about how they impact you. Now we're going to talk about whether you have unprocessed emotions or not. So you can kind of use the list that I'm about to share to determine whether you may have those unprocessed emotions. So let's get into it. And by the way, I do want to say that most of us have unprocessed emotions. I personally don't know one person who doesn't. I have them. A lot of people have them, because these are things that happened in our childhood, and it takes time to work through these things. And it's like you'll find yourself working through one thing just to find out there's something else. And so it's an ongoing journey. So please be graceful with yourself. Please be kind to yourself. As I share this list, if there's something that you hear and you're like, oh my God, I have unprocessed emotions, don't be hard on yourself, because again, we pretty much all do. So number one is if you regularly feel numb. If you find that you can't feel joy, you find that you can't feel happiness, that you just are numb to everything, you don't really feel happy, but you don't really feel sad, that might be a coping mechanism to unprocessed emotions. So super important to ask yourself, why do I feel numb? Are there certain emotions that I feel more numb to compared to others? Why is it that there are those emotions where I feel more deeply and there are the ones where I don't? Just ask yourself, where does this come from? What event happened in my life that caused me to start protecting myself when it comes to this particular emotion? Number two is if you find that you feel nervous, if you find that you feel stressed, and again, you don't know why. So that's another thing you can ask yourself. What am I anxious about? Why does this thing cause me to be anxious? Where in my childhood did this similar event come up that kind of blew out of proportion and made me feel this way, or whatnot? So again, similar thought process, similar questioning of why do I feel this? What caused this to happen? How do I really feel deep down about this? What do I need to do to release it, etc., etc. Number three is if you feel low and you don't know why. So if you're feeling kind of sad, you're just kind of in this state of unhappiness and you just don't know what it is, you can't shake it off, that's another example of maybe having unprocessed emotions. So you can ask yourself, okay, why do I feel this way? What happened in my day today that's causing me to feel kind of low? And if that's difficult and you can't identify it, you can ask yourself, okay, what am I sad about? What has happened recently that has caused this shift within me? What things in general make me upset in my life? Why do those things make me upset? When in my childhood did something similar happen that made me upset about this particular thing? Again, keep asking yourself why, because you'll find that the more you peel back and you ask yourself why, when, what happened, with who, what did they do, you're gonna find the answers. So number four is a really big one, I feel, for a lot of people, and that's feeling uncomfortable when people ask you about your feelings. So if you have a hard time opening up your heart, if you have a hard time sharing how you feel, if you have a hard time being vulnerable, that's definitely a sign of unprocessed emotion. So you can ask yourself, why is it hard for me to share what's on my mind? Why is it difficult for me to be vulnerable? What within me makes me feel unsafe? When people ask me about what's going on inwards, why do I feel unsafe? and keep going back, keep peeling those layers back, and you will find your answers. So number 5, and this is something I have definitely struggled with in the past, and even sometimes now I find myself struggling with it, but it's going along when you don't want to go along. So if you have friends or family or whomever that wants to do something, for example, they want to go out to a party and you want to stay home, and you find yourself saying yes to them and no to yourself because you don't want to hurt their feelings, or you don't want to be the party pooper, you don't want to be the lame one at home, that is due to unprocessed emotions. And so you can ask yourself, why is it difficult for me to say what's truly on my mind? Why is it difficult for me to do what I want to do? Where within me do I feel unsafe and even afraid to let people down? Why do I think that I'm letting people down? What about me saying no even means that I'm letting people down, right? So you can just keep asking yourself, like, why am I afraid to tell people no? Why do I think that they'll be mad at me if I say no? So just keep peeling back and ask yourself those questions. So number 6 is if you distract yourself with substances, if you distract yourself with being around people all the time, if you distract yourself on social media, that may be a sign of unprocessed emotions. And so it's one thing to enjoy life, be around people, it's okay to be on social media, but if the underlying reason is because you're distracting yourself, because you don't want to sit with whatever's going to come up within you otherwise, that's unprocessed emotions. And so you can ask yourself, how much time do I spend with other people? How much time do I spend distracting myself? Why do I not like being alone? What about being alone makes me feel uncomfortable? What about being alone makes me feel unsafe? And again, keep asking yourself those questions until you get to that layer of where things are really stemming from. And then the final thing I want to say is number 7, which is being passive aggressive. So if you find that it's hard for you to say what's truly on your mind, and that instead you're passive aggressive about it to prove a point, that might be because of unprocessed emotions. Because technically, what is the point of being passive aggressive? We're passive aggressive when we want to get a point across. We're passive aggressive when we want people to know we're bothered, we're upset about something. But instead of being passive aggressive, why not just be honest and vocal? And so if you're passive aggressive, you can ask yourself, why am I passive aggressive? What within me makes me feel like I can't just be honest about what's really happening, about what's really on my mind? And a lot of times that passive aggressiveness comes from, there was probably a point, at one point in your life where you were honest and maybe someone took it the wrong way. Maybe things blew out of proportion because you were just honest, speaking what was on your mind and in your heart, and someone took it the wrong way, and then you internalized that to where you couldn't then be honest anymore. And so being passive aggressive was kind of like the second best way in your eyes to communicate that frustration. And so ask yourself, where does this come from? So you've made it to the end. We've talked about what unprocessed emotions are, the impacts of them, whether or not to know if you have unprocessed emotions or not. So now we are finally going to talk about 9 steps that you guys can take to liberate yourself, to release those emotions, and so that you can just be a happier person, because ultimately unprocessed emotions get in the way of your happiness, and it's time to take your power back. So congratulations for making it this far in the video. These 9 things that I'm about to share are all things that I have tried at some point in my life. They are not 9 things that I do every single day. I like to alternate and swap certain things out. So while I do some things on some days, I'll do others on other days. So all just things that I want to share with you guys that have helped me. These are all things that I have researched on. These are all things that people that I know have tried that have helped them. And so do what you please with this information. Number 1 is developing self-awareness. It's so important to know who you are, what things bother you, and to just pay attention to the way that you react to your environment in a non-judgmental way. So developing kind of that awareness of how you are and just how you react is so big here. And little things that you can do to kind of develop this self-awareness is to pick an emotion that you want to start observing. So if you're someone who often feels upset, let's just say, make that intention of, okay, I'm gonna start paying attention to what makes me upset and how I respond. And so next time something bothers you, something makes you sad, that's where in that moment you say, okay, I'm feeling upset. I'm gonna pay attention to where I feel this in my body. So where does that emotion live in your body? Is it your stomach? Do you feel like tightness in your stomach? Do you feel it in your shoulders? Do you feel it in your lower back? These emotions manifest in our body, and if you just pay attention for a moment, you will feel where it lives within your body. And so you can just ask yourself, okay, what am I feeling? Where is it? How does this feel? Why do I feel this way? What exactly did I see today that bothered me? And why did that bother me? So if it was something you saw on social media, you can ask yourself, what about this post or what about this thing this person said actually makes me upset? Why does it make me upset? Why is it feeling the way that it feels within my body? Okay, what do I need to do to release this and let this go? So again, just kind of developing that self-awareness. Number 2 is really similar to number 1, but it's to just in general pay attention to things that make you feel uncomfortable. Because when you feel uncomfortable, that's your body begging you to pay attention to whatever is going on so that you can release that. So maybe it's something someone says, maybe it's something someone asks you, maybe it's something that happens at work. Whatever makes you feel uncomfortable, you'll know because you'll literally feel it in your body. You'll feel uncomfortable. And that's a perfect opportunity to sit with yourself and ask yourself, okay, why do I feel this way? You know, what's going on here? Why is this bothering me? Why does this make me uncomfortable? When has something similar happened to me as a little kid that made me feel uncomfortable? Is this where it stemmed from? And so forth. Number 3 is journal every day. I always say this, I'm such a big advocate of journaling, but that's because it's such an amazing release. Like whatever you have going on here, which is probably a lot, you can let it out and just feel so much better by journaling. And same thing for what you feel in your heart, whatever emotions that you're feeling. Write about it, release that energy, because I promise you, once you start writing and you let it all out, you instantly feel better. Like if you're someone who, you know, I'm not gonna say that you can just do things like this in the snap of a finger and expect to see change overnight, but I will say that if you do kind of appreciate being able to track progress quickly, journaling is such a great way to do that, because you'll see that one moment you feel worried and stressed and mad and anxious, but after you journal, you're gonna find that, wow, I actually feel a lot better. So that's one that I really recommend. Number 4 is shadow work. Shadow work is so big. Shadow work is so important. And from everything I share on this list, like if there was one thing that I would say you need to do, it is shadow work. Don't be afraid of doing shadow work. Don't be afraid of your shadow. And I will say that this is kind of a new term, and I definitely have seen it along TikTok in the last couple of years, but shadow work is not new. And I will say that I have been doing shadow work for the last 15 years of my life, and it has played a huge role in my self-growth. It has played a huge role in my spiritual journey and self-development. And it's interesting because I was curious, as literally a 7th grader, I was curious about why do I feel jealous? Like, why do I want what other people want? What about that person's parents makes me jealous and envious of like what I don't have with my parents? I was just really curious at a young age of why there were these dark parts within me, and I was not afraid to ask those questions. And I encourage you to not be afraid of your shadow, because your shadow is there to teach you. Your shadow is there to help you see what within you need to let go of so that you can be happy, so that you can move on, so that you can be elevated, so that you can take your power back. Your shadow is not there to keep you in the dark. Your shadow is not there to keep you stuck. Your shadow is not there to make you afraid. And I know that that concept, you know, of shadow work may sound scary because it really is those dark parts of you, but you wouldn't be who you are without those dark parts. We're not all just, you know, light human beings. We're not all here with just like, there's no person who's a perfect human being. There's no person who is just an amazing, incredible, great, fantastic human being. We all have these dark parts within us, but they're there to teach us. And so if you ignore the lessons it's trying to teach you, you will be stuck in the place that you are for the rest of your life. It's so important to face your shadow. Do not be afraid of your shadow. You can set up whatever supports that you need. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a Facebook group, a community that you're a part of, maybe your therapist if you have a therapist, maybe it's your parents, but do not be afraid of your shadow. You can either be afraid of your shadow and be stuck, or you can face your shadow and face your fears and accept all parts of you and grow and heal. Like, the best part of this is that you get to heal. You get to decide if you want to heal and move on. And so I would just really recommend doing shadow work. You can buy a shadow workbook journal, or you can just ask yourself questions like, what do I not like about myself? What within me makes me jealous about other people? What within me makes me think that I'm not worthy? When was the time when I was a little kid where I felt like I was not good enough? Those are all questions that help you access your shadow self. Number 5, let's talk about breath work. Breath work has been such an amazing way for me to release things that I had in my subconscious mind, feelings, hurt, past traumas, past pain. And I will say that it's It's something that I would encourage implementing, but it's something that I would definitely, please do your research on. Please consult your doctor. Please just make sure you are aware of the physical sensations that you may feel in your body, because in breath work, you may shake, your hands may shake, your legs may twitch, you may feel paralyzed at some points throughout that process, and it's because your body is just simply not used to putting that much oxygen into it and that quickly. It's just such a rapid pace and a lot happens, but it's just so worth it in my opinion, because it's just such a good way to tap into these unlocked feelings, and you'll start to remember things, especially if you're doing a breathwork class with a proper facilitator. And you can do breathwork at home. There are tons of guided YouTube videos, but I just find that, I mean, it's all effective, but I find that doing it in an actual class setting is the most powerful way, because it's a safe space. The instructor typically creates that safe space for you, and you're not as shy versus maybe doing it in your apartment. You may be holding back, but when you have someone there to guide you and support you, you're likely to go more in and fully take advantage of that experience. So breathwork is just such a great way to relieve some of that stored trauma, to let go of some of that hurt and that pain that you may be holding on to. Number 6, meditation. I freaking love meditation. This is such an amazing tool that we have accessible to all of us. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be good at it. You can do this from the comfort of your home. You can find a guided meditation. And what I love about that is on YouTube, there are so many people who have guided meditations for boosting self-esteem, for forgiving other people, for letting go of certain things that have happened to you, for building your confidence. There's just so many different ways to implement meditation, and you can even find one specifically for unlocking your subconscious mind, for, you know, remembering things that have happened to you in your childhood that maybe you forgot. You can use meditation as a tool to help you release things that you don't even know you hold on to. And that's the thing. You may think that you don't have stored trauma, but that could be because your subconscious mind is protecting you, even though it's not really protecting you, because in a way it hurts you, right? Like, if it's ultimately holding you back in your life, what good is it really doing you by protecting you to not remember? It's not doing you any good. And so meditation is just such an amazing tool to use in this process. Number 7 is yoga. Let me tell y'all, okay, if you want kind of an instant, you know, if you're looking for something to release right now, right? If you want to feel that physical sensation of letting go, yoga is a really good way to do this, because you're literally in these positions that are super uncomfortable. You're having to breathe through the pain. You're having to stretch through the pain. You will find yourself feeling emotional during yoga, especially when you set that intention. Tell yourself, today, I want to let go of whatever doesn't serve me, and you take your yoga class seriously, or your at-home yoga session that you find on YouTube seriously. You're going to find that you do start to feel certain things out of nowhere, and it may feel like for no reason, but that's because your body's been holding on to it for so long that you just don't know. You didn't know that you were feeling that pain here in your hip, or you were feeling that stored trauma up in your upper back or in your shoulders. And so yoga is a really good way to let some of that stuff go. So I would highly encourage doing yoga. Number 8 are 2 things. It's identifying your limiting beliefs and turning them into affirmations. So you could say it's 2 things, but I think that they go hand in hand. Identifying your limiting beliefs is huge, because this is where ultimately you are holding your own self back. So if you say things like, I'm never going to be good enough, I'm never going to be worthy, it's important to change these limiting beliefs into affirmations, because it's going to help you in your journey. So if you change that affirmation to something like, I am worthy, I am more than enough, when I love myself, love just shows up in my life, that feels good. And it feels empowering, and it feels liberating. And so it's important to develop that positive self-talk, but it really stems from knowing what your limiting beliefs are in the first place. And so when you're thinking about, you know, unprocessed emotions and stored trauma, that typically stems and it grows into those limiting beliefs. So if you're telling yourself, you know, that you're not worthy, that you're not good enough, no one's gonna love you, ask yourself, why do you think that? Where does that come from? Who told you that as a kid? Who told you weren't going to be good enough? Was it a teacher? Was it a primary caregiver? Was it even a friend or a family member? And ask yourself, why did they say that to me? You may not know, but I do think it helps with cultivating and developing kind of that compassion, and just asking yourself, you know, were they hurt? Were they hurt projecting that pain onto me, and I processed it this way because I didn't know better? Like, what happened here? Just keep asking yourself those questions, and you will find your answers. So the second part of that, right, is turning that limiting belief into an affirmation. So you can sit there and write down all of your limiting beliefs and turn them into affirmations and say your affirmations to yourself every day, but without actually peeling back those layers and identifying where those limiting beliefs stemmed from, it really does kind of defeat the process, because you can say your affirmations and feel good about it and believe them, but you still have to do the work and understand where the limiting beliefs came from, because that's what's ultimately going to allow you to release it. So don't forget that part. And then the final thing that I want to say is step number 9, and that is to just make some alone time for yourself. It can be 1 minute, it can be 2 minutes, but cultivating that time to spend with yourself is really big, because that's where a lot of breakthroughs are going to happen. And it's not to say that they won't happen when you're with other people, because they will. Like, you can have major, massive breakthroughs when you're with people. However, when you're with people, you're typically focusing on them. Your priority is typically facing outwards, versus when you're alone, your priority is facing inwards, right? Unless you're distracting yourself on your phone and whatnot. But that's why it's important when you're cultivating that alone time to remove all of your distractions. And you can mix and match, right? Like, you can use your alone time to do the journaling. You can use your alone time to do the meditation, to do the yoga. And so you don't have to necessarily just sit there and like, you know, do nothing. I mean, you can. I like doing that, because I honestly feel like it forces me to pay attention to like where I'm feeling uncomfortable. So it just really depends on you, but make sure to include some sort of alone time so that you can really check in with yourself and take advantage of that opportunity to see how you're feeling, what's going on with you that day, and to help you ultimately release whatever it is that you're holding on to. So that's all I have with these 9 steps. Again, these are things that I have all tried at one point in my life that have personally helped me release stored emotions, trapped emotions, unprocessed emotions, all of that. And they are things that I still do in my day-to-day. Right now, I really am loving the yoga. I like journaling and I like meditating, but I'll swap them out. So sometimes instead of meditating, I'll do something else. Like, instead, I might just do the breath work, right? Like, I really find that these are all tools you can use at any stage of your life, and you're allowed to switch them out. Like, you don't have to be tied down to one thing. So mix and match them, do whatever you feel called to, whatever feels aligned to you. Just don't let those unprocessed emotions go unnoticed anymore, because that is what is holding you back, and it is time to release them. It's time to let them go, because you deserve better, and you know that you do. So that's all I have for today's video. Please let me know one takeaway that you received from this video, or one thing that you're gonna promise yourself that you're gonna do so that you can start releasing those unprocessed emotions that are no longer serving you, that have never served you. I'm here for you guys. I love you guys. I'm in this journey with you as well, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.